Dr. Thema Bryant is a renowned psychologist, best-selling author, and minister whose revolutionary work bridges psychology, spirituality, and social justice. She served as former president of the American Psychological Association in 2023 and continues her commitment to advance mental health equity, trauma healing, and justice for marginalized communities. How does trauma disconnect us from who we are?
When we are harmed as human beings, we like to make meaning or to create stories about why this happened and how I could keep it from happening again. When we do that, we erase ourselves, abandon ourselves, neglect ourselves. So now we gotta recognize the lies and disrupt them and to change the story we've been telling ourselves. I'm not the one who shattered myself, but I do get to put my pieces back.
And for someone who's trying to make this transition, what's the next step that they can take?
The next thing I would say therapeutically is...
Welcome to Light Within. We are so excited you're here.
But before we dive in, we'd love to ask you for a quick favor. We're a brand new podcast, and your hitting subscribe would mean the world to us. So please take a moment to hit subscribe, like, comments, and help our team bring this amazing content to you every single week. Thank you. And now back to the episode.
Dr. Thema, welcome to Light Within.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, we are so grateful you're here. You've had such an incredible journey, psychologist, professor, minister, author, former president of the APA, and somehow you still make time to be a sacred artist and lead healing for so many people. And with all the impact you've made, I would love to start with this. Where did this all begin for you? What first called you to this work?
Yes. So I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland, and I was the pastor's daughter. And both of my parents were actively involved in ministry. My mom focused on women's ministry. Within our community, a lot of times when people were struggling, instead of calling a therapist or a psychologist, they would go to their pastor. So I like to say my first time working a crisis hotline was in my childhood home, just when people would call all hours of day or night. And I have always been what people would call sensitive, a sensitive soul. And so if my parents weren't home or not available and I answered, I would just try to bear witness and have a lot of compassion for whatever people were going through. And my dad did pastoral counseling, and that was my first entryway to this idea of being alongside someone as they go through their healing process. And then when I got older, I found out that it's a field in and of itself. There's a such thing as psychologist. And as soon as I learned that, I said, that's me. And I have been continuing on that path in ways that have been nourishing and beneficial. And when you're in your path, walking in your purpose, you feel it and you know it. So I'm so grateful to be among people who have the privilege of doing what I feel I'm here to do.
I love that. Were there certain events or experiences that really led you towards this path?
Yes. So being a listener in general, it was the exposure of my father during his pastoral counseling. I will also say growing up, it wasn't diagnosed, but later on, we found out that my mom really lived with depression and anxiety. It was untreated, undiagnosed, and she just was carrying the weight of that. And so, because it wasn't known to her, it also wasn't named to us, but just growing up in the household, seeing both her giftedness and compassion, but also real despair and distress, I believe really put me in a place of being tuned into people's suffering.
I really resonate with that because my mother also went through some heavy depression and
Mhm.
I experienced it even at a young age. So
Yeah.
dealing with, how do you deal with a mother or a parent who is struggling with their mental health? How do you be that support for them?
Yes. Yeah. And it tunes you into seeing things and noticing things that some people wouldn't notice. So often when people will say, oh, you're an old soul or you're wise beyond your years, It's often that exposure that you have
Mm.
seen some things and been exposed to things that some children don't have to become aware of until later in life.
How did that make you feel when you had to grow up in that way?
It gave me a sense of that consideration,
Mm.
considering the others, being tuned into how something is impacting a person, especially when it's not being said. So I think part of that really helps me to be a good therapist because I'm listening for what's said, but also paying attention to what's not said and giving voice to those experiences. But it also gave me a desire to be a bridge between the worlds of psychology and spirituality. Because often within church or other spiritual spaces, there can either be silencing around mental health issues or a blaming of like, if you prayed enough or meditated enough or were all of these things, if you were enough, like you would just be joyful every day, which is just not true. And so it has been helpful for me to spread awareness about mental health within faith based communities. And also on the other side, a lot of times people who are trained in psychology have not been trained around spirituality or the sacred. And so many just ignore it, don't ask questions about it, or even worse, pathologize it. Because if they were not exposed to it, their thought may be that it's only blame and shame or it's only negative, and not realizing that for many people, it can be a major resource. So I like to say it allows me to see the full range of experiences that for some people it can be silencing and harmful. And for other people, it can be really the key that helped them to survive. And for some, it's some of both. And so holding space for people to be able to name what their journey has been as it relates to their spirituality or religion.
What I've seen at my church and other churches as well is that now they're a lot more open talking about mental health and
Yeah.
bringing the right resources to whether that's the volunteers, their staff.
Mhm.
Whereas before, I didn't really see that.
Right.
What do you think is happening?
There has been a lot of growth in that area. And I think a part of it is people being more honest. Before there was so much silence and secrecy, people were suffering and had all of these issues, but we would talk about it in code. So it was, I'm going through a storm. I'm going up the rough side of the
I've
mountain.
heard that before. Yeah.
Right. But you never name what the storm is.
Mm.
But now people will say, my child was just diagnosed with autism, or I'm dealing with addiction or bipolar disorder, or the uncle went to the war and came back with PTSD. So there's more truth telling, and the truth sets us free. Then we can actually go there.
How should churches show up for mental health and not just preach about it?
Yes. So I would say first being compassionate and two being informed. Because oftentimes when people are not informed, they say things that are very problematic. And I know it comes from like not knowing an answer and thinking you have to make up an answer. So then it will be, oh, this trauma happened because God is testing your faith. Or worse, one I think I've heard is around death to say God needed a voice in his heavenly choir. It's like, that's not an answer. Like, God needed my loved one to sing in his choir. So, for us to, one, be more informed about mental health, and two, to recognize like some of this is a mystery, to be able to say to people when they're trying to figure out like why something happened, we may never know why it turned out that way, like why you or why your family at this particular time, but we still utilize our faith as a resource to get through the storm, even when we don't understand the why.
Yeah, that's so important because for a lot of my friends or people that I know, a
Yeah.
lot of their trauma actually came from
Mm.
religion, whether that's
Yes.
church that they attended
Yeah.
way back. What do you
Right.
say to those people who
Yeah.
experience trauma from a religious setting?
I want to first say that as a collective, a faith community, that we apologize and repentance. So repentance is a change of mind to say we're working to ensure that those things don't continue to happen, and to note that that is lament worthy or grief worthy, because sometimes people are pressed to like forgive and get over it. And there's a coldness there. And especially if the person who did the harm was a minister, then people will say, touch not my anointed. So, like, if someone's anointed, like, you can't say anything. And it's like, no, we have to have space for truth about the harms that have been done. And then I encourage people to recognize the difference between God and humanity, that people are imperfect. And yes, these are also people who are calling themselves people of God or children of God, but they're imperfect. But humanity also shows up in every space, like wherever you go. Because even some people will say, well, then I won't be religious, I'll be spiritual. And then they go to a yoga studio and discover like hierarchy and competitiveness and who did you train with? And so humans have a way of humaning wherever we go. And so to not lose sight like of the values of the ideal, even though we miss the mark. And I, say that sometimes people will give themselves a break, especially if it was harmed within kind of like an institution or like a formalized church. Some people will say like, I don't want to go back. I go to the beach or I go for a walk in nature, especially because we're in California, they're going hiking. God will meet you wherever you are. And then I say at some point to explore the possibility of a community. And now you know some things and are tuned into some things. So you'll know some red flags that maybe you wouldn't have seen before. So if they say certain things or certain kind of mandates or rules they have, then you'll know like that's too controlling or that doesn't feel like love to me. And then you go into other places where it feels like, while imperfect, it feels like people are trying to do the right thing.
I love that. While imperfect, people are trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
That's such a powerful reminder because
Right?
people do have good intentions, yet it may
Yes.
not come off in a
Right.
way that supports
Yeah.
you or may
Yeah.
hurt you.
I'll give you just an example along those lines. I love to dance, and I directed the dance group at my church in South Los Angeles. The church is a very kind of like huggy-feely church. And there was a new woman in the dance ministry. And when she kind of noticed the vibe, said, I don't like to hug. And for me, I hear that and I'm like, okay, yes, moving right along. This older woman in the group like makes a beeline over to her and is like, you're going to get this hug. And she's squeezing her, like not letting her go, thinking that she's going to somehow heal her or break her out of her condition with like a hug she doesn't want. So I had to like intervene. And it's that example of the difference between intention and impact, right? You think you're being loving, but listen to what this person said. Look at their face, look at their body. They're not enjoying this. And it's not for you to say, today's the day you're going to start loving hugs. So we have to walk in humility and recognize we're not all identical. Yeah.
So powerful. You have a book, you have multiple books
Mhm.
on trauma,
Yeah.
Homecoming. Where did your passion for trauma come from?
So I have had, unfortunately, multiple exposures to trauma. One, I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland, primarily. And while it's a beautiful community culturally and artistically, when I was growing up, and it's gotten a little bit better this past year, interestingly, but in general has high rates of community violence. And so growing up, I was very much exposed to seeing violence in the community. It was a normal thing for there to be fights at school. And interestingly, it wasn't remarkable to me until as a mother, my daughter was like in the 8th grade, the first time she saw a fight at school. When she got in the car and was describing this thing, that was the first time it hit me that I don't have a memory of before I've seen fighting, like in kindergarten people just fight. And so all of that to say I was tuned into it and exposed to that. My father was elected to be a bishop in our denomination, which is African Methodist Episcopal. And usually your first term is overseas. So he was assigned to Liberia, West Africa. I was 14 years old, just finished my freshman year of high school. So we moved as a family of four. And I say that like the first year and a half were like transformative and inspiring because for the first time in my life, everyone in a position of authority looked like me. So that's where I really got the idea that I can be anything. Like when people say, what gave you the confidence to run for president of APA? It's like, why not me? So, but when you see that, like then, this is of course like pre-Obama. This is like in the late 80s, early 90s. And so that part of it was magnificent. And then about midway through our second year, a civil war broke out. It was devastating, so many lives lost. And my family, we were only able to be evacuated because we're American. An alert went out to US citizens that were in the country saying, these are the last planes by which we could guarantee getting you out. So if you want to leave, you had to come to the airport. And so I like to say, when we recognize privilege, right? Because I didn't do anything to earn that seat on that plane. I just happened to be born African American. But some people just get stuck in guilt versus letting that mobilize them. So I live with the fact that I got a seat and some other people didn't get the seat. So what am I going to do with the fact that I was rescued? What am I going to do with that? So I live not with a sense of guilt, but a sense of purpose, that it has to be purposeful, me being here.
It's so inspiring where even if you recognize that you may not have been born with the privilege, you use that as an advantage to,
Yes.
drive forward.
Right.
What's your advice or what do you say to people who may be in a similar situation,
Mhm.
but don't have the courage or the motivation or the inspiration to really move forward and are in that guilt?
So I would say the thing that you feel guilty about is opportunity. So even I tell my students at Pepperdine, like, we're not in this classroom just because you all were the smartest. There are smart people who like will never get to go to college, who just didn't have the resource and the opportunity. So don't waste it. So you can let that be your motivation instead of saying, like, oh, I feel so bad. So now I'm just going to be stuck. Then I take that as a point of inspiration and also a way possibly of like reaching back or spreading. A part of my piece with social media and these podcasts is like wanting to spread knowledge. You shouldn't have to have a degree to have like good mental health. So then how can I help to spread the word beyond textbooks? So that's been a part too of me like writing the books and doing the podcast and doing social media, is trying to share information in a more equitable way.
I love that.
Thank
Just,
you.
yeah, just providing the support so that
Yeah,
anyone in the world
that's right.
can find the
Yeah.
support that they need.
And I have a research lab at Pepperdine, and a part of what I talk to my students about is, yes, you want to know how to present at conferences, but also if I take you into South Los Angeles, can you explain to them what depression is or how to cope with stress and say it in a way that's clear and understandable, not with all this jargon and words that nobody knows what you're talking about. Yeah.
Absolutely. Before we dive deeper into your book, Homecoming, I'd love to dive deeper into trauma and personal
Mhm.
healing. Throughout all of that, what was the hardest point for you?
I would say, the assault of when I was in college, I went home for a break and we talked about church harm. The offender was actually a member of our church. And so that puts another layer on it, also this assumed trust, right? So because they were a member of my church, I was familiar with them. They had been in our home before. So on this particular day, my family wasn't there. I was home from college. I was a student at Duke University, and they showed up at the door and I opened it. And that is what is more commonly the situation, where it's not a stranger. And often we're prepared for, like, they tell you for strangers to, like, don't walk by yourself at night. If you're going to get into your car, look in the back seat first, or like walk with your keys. So we have all this stranger danger, which is important because there are people who get attacked by strangers. But what is most common are acquaintances, family, friends, people who you know. So that was the first time that I struggled academically. School had always come easy to me. I was an A student. I went back to Duke after that. Couldn't focus, couldn't concentrate, just like sitting there looking at the textbooks, and I can't retain the information, can't figure out what to do. And so I went to the campus counseling center and started my healing journey. My career, my life has been a continuous Sankofa. So, Sankofa is this African image, West African image of a bird that is flying forward while looking back. And so, I'm continuously reaching back for survivors and helping people to get their wings back.
Wow. I'm so sorry to hear about that
Thank you.
experience.
Thank you so much. The gift of it has been because silence and secrets multiply shame, but the
Mm,
more you speak about it, the easier it is. And there has never been, whether a classroom or a conference or community center, there's never been a space where I tell my story and there's not someone in the room who's like, me too.
mm,
So it's also important for me. So for people to see an example of what life can look like on the other side, because often people are only discussing it in the point of devastation. And so then your model of like, what can my life look like? It's just all devastation. Because once people who are able to kind of get to the other side of it, like tuck it away, never to speak about it. So then when people see you successful, they assume you've had an easy life. They're like, "Oh, that big smile." They're like, "Oh, it must have been easy." And I say, "I'm glad you think so. I'm glad."
I feel like it's the other way around.
Right. Yes.
It's the people who went through the hardest
Yes, it's true.
moments.
It's also you have like a gratitude and appreciation for life. Some people can get to that place. You don't take things for granted. This could have been a very different day, but
Mm.
like this is beautiful.
Yeah. After such a devastating event, what made you finally believe like healing was possible?
What I often tell people is I know it because I lived it. It's not just something I read. While the reading is wonderful, the studying is wonderful, but in terms of being able to trust the process. So I would say both. First and foremost, knowing it's possible because I can reflect on my own journey, but also now with all of these years in the field, so many people that I've been blessed to bear witness, to walk with, to see like their remarkable journey. So when people come in wondering like, is there any hope? Is it possible that like I could get my sleep back or get my trust back or get my appetite back or get my confidence back, even my idea of intimacy to get that, whether back or for the first time to get it, then I can say without question it is.
Mm.
Yeah, you can reclaim yourself.
What would you say to someone who's still scared to speak their truth?
I would say there are a number of activities we can do before even getting to like saying it. So I mentioned before loving to dance, and I do think that was a big part of my healing is before I said it, I had danced it. So it wasn't stuck in me. Like I had already expressed it. People just didn't know what I was saying. So the arts can be a wonderful way because you can code it as much as you like. I write poetry as well. And like poems sometimes can be very explicit and you know what they're talking about. And other times you're like, there was a tree. Right? And nobody knows what you're talking about, but
There's
you
a
know.
storm.
So I say in the arts, explore it in your artwork. You could write it in a journal and then recognizing the things that are difficult for you as a result of that and working toward being able to do those things. So an example would be I worked with a client who was in one of those mass shootings at a concert. And before this, she loved going to concerts. So then that became the goal is like, I need to go to a concert and like take that back. So we worked toward that. And then the day she went with two friends And the friends agreed that if she gave a signal that they would leave without a fuss, and she was able to stay. And so then create this new memory or the reclaimed memory of like, that's not going to be taken from me. I can experience that again and it be good.
For those who may have had traumatic experiences, but
Mhm.
they're not aware of it or in tune with that,
Yeah.
how does trauma disconnect us from who we are?
So when we are harmed as human beings, we like to make meaning or to create stories
Mm.
about why this happened and how I could keep it from happening again. So sometimes those stories can box us in to certain behaviors. So we may say, oh, this happened on a date, so I'm never going to date again, or it happened with a person who had power over me. And so whenever I encounter somebody with power, I'm going to show them I'm the powerful one. So, we get into these patterns of trying to keep ourselves safe. And we can also, like that people pleasing, altering yourself, trying to figure out what do people want me to be, and then let me be that, and then I'll be safe. So when we do that, we erase ourselves, abandon ourselves, neglect ourselves. We're in like a perpetual performance. And so for some people, it's getting back to the truth of who they are. And for some people, the trauma happens so early that it's discovering who you are for the first time.
What does it really mean to come home to yourself?
To come home to yourself is to continuously tell yourself the truth and then live based on that truth.
Could you give us an example?
Yeah. When you're disconnected, you often say what you think other people want to hear, right? So an easy one is, how are you? And we say, fine. Or if you're churchy, how are you? I'm blessed. I'm better than blessed. Right?
God
And
is good.
right, oh, all the time, all the time. So when we do that, we often don't even pause to see, how am I? Right? So you're not even aware you're lying. You're not even aware. And I push back on this idea of like too blessed to be stressed, because you can be blessed and stressed at the same time. And so one activity is just to tell people for the next week, whether with everyone or with people who you choose, whenever someone says, how are you? Pause first and then give an honest answer. So then I can say, like, I'm tired, or I'm disappointed, or I'm frustrated, or I'm stressed, or I'm joyful. Because sometimes, depending on like your culture, family, and religion, some people had to hide their good news
Mm.
because people would say you're bragging, or if I'm too happy, something bad is going to happen. So for us to be able to speak the truth first to ourselves and then to other people, that will also show up for those of us who have difficulty setting boundaries, difficulty saying no, that when I'm at home within myself, even if someone is disappointed or mad, I check in with me to say, do I really have the capacity for what is being asked of me? Do I actually want to do that? Is it in alignment with my intentions for myself? Because in order to say yes to my mental health, to my purpose, physical health, I'm going to have to say no to some things. And sometimes we're so upset about somebody else being upset that we're like in bondage. So when I'm at home with myself, even if they're mad, it's okay. I still have to honor like my truth.
Mm. I love how simple it is.
Right?
When someone asks you how you're feeling, you really take a moment to be honest with yourself, speak your
Yes.
truth. What
Yes.
happens as you do that over and over again?
Right. So, one, I'm going to say in terms of relationship and community, transparency is contagious. We all have like that one friend that'll say whatever. And so then when you're in their presence, you find yourself more liberated, more free to be like, oh, like I didn't know we could say that. It's like at the APA convention, I will often start my presentations like by singing, and people are like confused at first, and then they're like excited. And I had a lady say to me, I didn't know we could sing at APA. And I said, who said we couldn't? We're in these boxes, and sometimes they're self-constructed boxes. So the more I lean into truth, one, I now create an environment where truth is expected and acceptable, and more people around me begin to share and be honest. So now my relationships are deeper, are more grounded, are more intimate and real. And then for myself, it becomes easier. Initially, it is hard. People say, like, oh, it feels strange. And that's the part of healing that we often don't let people know. Healing can feel awkward because we're used to doing it this other way, either the way we saw the people who raised us do it, or the way we had to do it in order to survive our communities or our households. And so to like pause and make a different choice, it's going to feel fake because what comes naturally to you may be dysfunctional. So, right. Then I have to like pause and say, okay, this feels weird, but I'm gonna like not get defensive or not attack. We have in our doctoral program, the students have to do these comprehensive exams where they come and present a case. And one of the biggest things I tell them is when you get feedback, not to get defensive, right? You want to be able to explain why you did what you did, but then also know whoever is like examining you has been doing this for years. So then you can just like pause and take it in, and it's not like an attack on your personhood.
What is the hardest part about coming home to yourself?
Ah, I would say the hardest part of coming home to yourself is you're going to lose some things and you're going to lose some people.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh.
I'm glad you asked that question because I don't want to sugarcoat it. Some people won't like the new you. Some people like when you're a doormat or when we call it easygoing, easy to please, go along, have no needs, be what everybody else wants. Jobs will love you for that. Partners will love you. Friends and family will love you for having no self. So when you start to heal and actually have some thoughts and some
Yeah.
needs and some feelings, some people will be happy for you and some people will have a real problem with it. But that will be a gift to you to know who your real people are. If your circle was small and they all fade away, you have now created space for authentic relationship to show up.
And how do you build those authentic relationships afterwards?
So it is one, knowing yourself, because like now that you have this new sense of things, I like to say your healing changed your taste. When I'm not whole, I will accept unacceptable things. I'll even be attracted to problematic things because I'm operating in my dysfunction. So your picker will change. Some things you'll know, more automatically and not in a condescending way or judgmental way. But you see how people respond to crisis or respond to stress or just respond to you, and you'll know some things don't align. So I can be cordial with everyone. I can be kind with everyone. But in terms of like who's in my inner circle, I want to be very intentional about that.
This is so interesting because everyone, if they put in the work through their healing journey, they start setting boundaries, they
Mhm.
start protecting their energy,
Yeah.
and they like that their circle gets smaller.
Uh-huh.
So, you
Yeah.
talk about losing friends, but
Right.
it's actually something that gives them joy,
Yeah.
ironically.
Yes, because it's less stress and less performance. Time is limited. Time is sacred. We don't know how much time we have. So it's like to fill your days and fill your weekends doing things you don't want to do, being in conversations you don't enjoy, engaging in things that in the end make you feel worse about yourself. Life is too short and too sacred. So you have your few that are quality, then you're good.
For people who are trying to heal from this exact thing, how do they reconnect with their needs after ignoring them for so long?
So the gift is around healthy people, it won't feel like such a risk. Around the wrong people or unhealthy people or selfish people, anything you say they will have an issue with. But when you encounter people who really want to know you, who really want to be your friend, who really care about you, their desire is for you to speak your truth. So when we're imagining, how do I do it? We're imagining sharing that part of myself in dangerous waters. So, of course, people who give you all kinds of red flags of like, I'm not safe for you to really unfold in my presence, then you're going to stay folded and tucked in. When you do encounter people who are more genuine, to lean into it. And what I like to tell people is to make it a gradual sharing. Many of us either tell people nothing or tell people everything on day one. And it's like, can be overload. And also at that point, I don't really know them. So, you give people a piece of your story, a piece of your journey, and see how they handle that, right? How do they carry that? How do they make hold of that? And allow it to develop over time instead of like, I met you today and now you must be my person and now you must be my best friend, and give it breathing room.
Yeah, I love how with the right people,
Yes.
you truly feel safe automatically
Yeah.
without you even needing
Yes.
to try.
Right. It's true. They ask and you're just like, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah.
For those who may be in a safe space, they have a great community, but they still feel guilty of taking care of themselves.
Yeah.
What's your advice for them? What might be
Yeah.
going on?
A lot of times what I have concluded is it's about worthiness, not feeling worthy of the care. Because I used to think that people don't know how to take care of themselves. So I would do these workshops where we say, like, to take care of your mind, this, to take care of your spirit, this, take care of your body, this. People know those things. I could have started the workshop by saying, list 7 ways to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
They know it. So then I thought the issue was time management, because people would often say, I don't have time to do that. But I was reading, and I can't ever remember the name of the book, but it was a book by a chaplain for a sports team. And he said one of the athletes on the team came to him and said, Chaplain, can you pray for me? Because I really want to pray more, but I don't have time. And so the chaplain said to him, you don't have a time management problem. You have an appetite problem, because whatever you're hungry for, you make time for. And I said, oh, that's real. That's real.
He didn't want to hear that. He did not want to hear that.
It's like, if I'm hungry, I'm going to find a drive-through. I'm going to find something. If I want to talk to someone, even if I have to step out of a meeting, I'm going to call and say, I'm in a meeting, but I just needed to say whatever. When it's on me to do it, I'm going to do it. And so in appetite problems, as I thought about like the desire, or the motivation, then sometimes we don't believe we're deserving of care. We believe other people are, because we take care of other people, but we figure that we're supposed to just soldier through it. Of like, I'm going to be okay. I'm fine. I'm strong. I don't need all of that. And so we associate care with weakness or indulgence. And some of that is the way we were raised. Some of us were told those things directly. I had a client whose one of his friends literally told him, the hour you spend at therapy every week, you could spend volunteering, helping the community. It's like, what in the world? What in the world? Are you kidding? Are you kidding? So sometimes we get these messages to make people feel bad about taking care of themselves. And so one of my dear friends, Asia, who's a poet, she has a poem and there's a line in it which just says, who lied to you? If I feel guilty for resting, if I feel guilty for taking care of myself, then I've been lied to and I am believing these lies. So now we got to recognize the lies and disrupt them and change the story we've been telling ourselves.
And for someone who's trying to make this transition, what's the next step that they can take?
So once I say, I want to try to take better care of myself, I don't want to lose sight of myself, then the next thing I would say therapeutically is set attainable goals. Because a therapeutic good goal is one that will stretch you, but it's attainable. And sometimes we set a goal that's such a stretch, we set ourselves up for failure. So I like to tell people, if you had KFC last night, don't say starting today, I'm vegan. Right? It's not going to work. You're not going to be. So, like, you got to start with meatless Mondays. You could do a meatless Monday and then build on it. So, when we're starting, like, we need some wins because that is what reinforces to us that it's possible. Another example I give is, when I have people who stay up really late and then have to wake up super early. If you're used to staying up till 2, I'm not going to say starting tonight, go to bed 9:30, right? We'll say like, let's try midnight. Even if you're not asleep, but you're laying in the bed by midnight. So then it's incremental care.
This makes so much sense.
Yeah.
I know even myself, just going from 0 to 100, trying to make this behavior change and just always going back.
And then when we fall off, we give up because the bar was so high. And then we're like, well, never mind, it didn't work. Yeah, I was talking to someone the other day, we were talking about like their nutrition. And they were just saying, like, if I fall off, I'm going to stay off for like months. So like, I can't fall off. So we got to like let ourselves get back on track.
For people who are before their healing journey,
Yeah.
what are some signs, maybe in the body that emotions are trapped inside?
So tightness in the body, like muscle ache, body ache. A lot of us have backache. So it's like, we're holding ourselves so tightly, very shallow breath. When you're stressed, we hold our breath. So even in therapy, I'll say to someone, are you breathing? And they will laugh and they're like, how'd you know? I'm like, well, I recognize what a body looks like because I've been in a body that was not breathing. And so to just like let that breath in. So body ache, backache, shallow breath, migraines, nausea, grinding our teeth, hair falling out, skin breaking out, the body expresses it.
And once they start to recognize that, how do you know if that's stored up trauma and emotions versus an acute, injury?
Well, you'll know over time. So if
Mm.
these things keep happening, if you're always feeling nauseous, your back is always like this isn't rare, it's not acute, but it's more continuous or being more prone to infection as our immune system is deteriorated because we're like living on high alert. So I would say you look for the patterns. Anybody, and especially like if you're in your teen years, of course, like face is going to break out. That's, part of puberty. But there is another portion of life where I'm perpetually stressed, holding it in my body, or the trauma, as you said, is in my body. Sometimes you can notice what areas of your body are sensitive to touch. If a person touches you a certain way, or even when you're bathing yourself, certain parts of your body, memory or something, energy gets stirred up, then for us to pay attention to that.
And once they're aware, but they can't figure out how to bring the emotions out, what should they
Right.
do?
So, one, of course, I would encourage people to go to therapy. These are people who are trained to help facilitate that process. There's also like embodied work. So, some people do like trauma informed yoga or dancing, stretching to get release from the body. You can also, as I was saying, like the journaling or the arts. Some people get that release in spiritual places, whether we call it like shouting or dancing in your prayers. But I would say you want to be mindful that the prayers are based in truth because sometimes people are praying a lot, but the prayers are shame based.
Mm.
So then you're not getting free. You're reiterating this negative story you're telling yourself.
And how do people rewire that negative story?
In narrative therapy, we talk about becoming the main character. Some of us are the side character in our own story. So, like, who do we make center? The people who hurt us. We're talking about them all the time. We're thinking about them all the time. We're designing our lives in response to them. We're looking at their social media account to see what they're doing now. So, we're a side character in our own story. So now we get to the way I say it for my own journey is some people wrote on the pages of my life that I did not give permission to, but now I have the pen. So now what am I writing? So that's what we have to say to ourselves around voice and agency. I have a voice and I have the power to act, and I don't want to just react, but like proactively live my life. And so, one of the indicators of transition that I will see with clients is I've had clients who I'm helping through divorce, and initially they're spending the whole hour talking about the ex. There's the topic is all because, and they're having to work through whether it was a betrayal, disappointment, whatever it is. But you'll know when they're shifting when they start talking more about themselves, past, present, and then future. So that's the story that we want to begin to develop. One of the things I say to people is we can get stuck in trying to figure out why. Like, why did they do this to me? And at a certain point, you want to shift your question to what now? Because I can get stuck in why, and then my healing is hostage to the people who harmed me. I'm waiting for them to free me, either with an apology or with an explanation. And I cannot go to the ones who dropped me to say, put me back together again. So I'm not the one who shattered myself, but I do get to put my pieces back.
I love how it's all about bringing the power back to you. What can
Right.
I do now? Instead
Yes.
of
Yes.
playing victim, let's say, and just
Right.
waiting on other people to make you feel better.
Yeah. Because you'll be waiting a long time.
Yeah, forever.
Yeah. And I'll say it's rare. It is beautiful when some people have that experience where people who hurt them had some life event or they like have an authentic remorse and then they come and apologize. That's beautiful, but it's not guaranteed. And so we don't want to be on hold waiting for that.
Your book Matters of the Heart talks about, letting go of, unhealthy relationships.
Mhm.
What's the hardest part of that?
Well, there is something in social psychology called sunk costs. So, with sunk costs, the more I've been invested in something, the harder it is to let go. So, we've invested our time, we've invested energy, we've invested years, sometimes we've invested money. And so then people will say, like, well, I don't want to let them go now. And then someone's going to reap the benefits of all my hard now they're going to be a better partner for somebody else. So it's like that the longer we're in, it's harder to let go. And then also because of our, let's say, fractured self esteem, many of us have been convinced that this is as good as it can get. So they may feel like, well, I'm older now, or like I missed my prime time, right? Where
Mm,
I would have had a bunch of options. So now I just have to like accept the crumbs that I'm being given. That some people get a feast and some people don't. So I just should be happy with my crumbs. Sometimes fear of the unknown, because they'll say, yeah, this is not perfect, but at least I know what I'm getting. If I go out there, then who knows who these people are.
mm,
So I like to tell people part of the shift or the letting go has to be like, even if I'm not guaranteed this like all-star partner, I choose not to be in this anymore. That's what we have to be willing to say, because I definitely as a therapist and as a minister, I'm not into giving false promises of like, let them go and your prince or princess is going to come tomorrow, like in 3 months they're going to show up. We hope so, and it's possible, but it's not guaranteed. There are some wonderful, wonderful people who are single. That's just a reality. But it becomes like, how do I choose to live my life? Because sometimes the suffering in it is worse than loneliness. So, and sometimes you're in it and still lonely.
You're
So,
suffering and lonely.
right. Yeah. So we work through that. And then also sometimes cultural or religious messages have convinced people that they have to be there. I remember hearing a minister say, where'd this idea come from about happiness? That's from the world. It's not about being happy. It's about being faithful to God. And I was like, what? So you have these people who are like 30 years and they're miserable, right? And it's like, wow, why do you want to be happy?
Mm.
Yeah, we want to tell ourselves the truth. And of course, you try to work on things, but there are times where sometimes like both people aren't working on it or not headed in the same direction, or that it is harmful to you physically, mentally, spiritually. It's breaking your wings.
Mm.
So if I'm literally sleeping with the enemy of my soul or the enemy of my purpose or the one who is really trying to block me from blooming, then I want to take a look at that.
I feel for people
Mhm.
who stay stuck in unhealthy relationships, it's part self worth, but some people just don't believe that they deserve real love. What would you say to someone who doesn't believe that they deserve real love?
I would say to them that the people who you see, whether in media or in real life, who are loved, those are not people who were perfect. So we need to unpack what is it you think about you is unlovable, right? Sometimes it's what they have done. Sometimes it's the shame about what has been done to them. Sometimes it's that, like, I'm not attractive enough, or there are people who are loved deeply and wouldn't be on a cover of a magazine. So, like, to unpack, and sometimes we're not even conscious of the story we're telling ourselves. So, to examine what exactly you feel disqualifies you, and would you give those same guidelines to someone else? Because we're often harder on ourselves than we are other people. We're like, oh, no, 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 they should be loved. It's like everybody else should be loved. And then, like, what about you? And I understand that it's a faith walk because many people have not experienced it. And
Mm.
so I don't come from like a harsh place of like, why don't you believe? It's like, of course you don't believe, because all of the evidence shows you are people who didn't treat you well.
Mm.
So then your expectation is that there's going to be more of that. But to be able to say, I want to, one, really take pause to get to know me, because that's another problem is sometimes people go from relationship to relationship and haven't had time for healing or reflection, and so then you're picking the same person. It's a different face, a different name, same pattern. So I say it's a good thing when initially you don't want to be bothered with anyone. Good. But you don't got to like jump back out there. Like take some time in solitude, some time with your friends, and just take care of yourself so that we, go back to that point of as I heal, my taste will change.
How do you let go of someone who doesn't truly love you?
The magic of this one is recognizing they're already gone.
Oh man.
Right? We're like, how do I let go? You don't have them.
Oh, that's so good. I've never heard that before.
Yes. They are, yeah, they're not yours. So maybe they used to be and now they're not anymore. And sometimes we're holding on to hope for someone who really was never ours. So this goes back to that homecoming. I got to tell myself the truth. Because often we think of insecure people holding on, but I have seen another category that often doesn't get acknowledged. And sometimes we're holding on because we're too confident. We're like, I'm going to win them over. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to take them there. I'm going to cook them this. I'm going to get dressed up. All these things I'm going to do instead of like recognizing I won't have to contort myself. I won't have to convince. Like what is for me is going to recognize me. And if they don't recognize me, if they don't recognize my value, then that's not for me. And that's okay. Because sometimes we're so invested because we feel like this is our last chance for love. We don't see anything else on the horizon, but you're spending so much of your energy and focus and time on them that there isn't room for
Mm.
anyone else to enter the picture.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was one of the best answers I've ever heard.
Yeah.
On the other side of that, what does it mean to feel seen in a relationship?
And let me say, being seen can be scary. That's the vulnerability. And that is why some people juggle multiple partners because then I'm so busy and distracted, no one ever really gets in. But to be seen is also healing because it heals the parts of us that believe that I'm unlovable, that I'm unacceptable, that if people saw like the real me, they wouldn't choose me. And so if I'm performing and pretending and people are with me, it doesn't register as love or as healing because I know they don't really know me. I'm pretending, right? But when I dare to reveal myself, faults, fears, characters, right? Right? We're layered, complex characters. So, like, when I let all that out, and people like, oh, wow, that's interesting. Oh, then that's healing because that's when you have actually been accepted. You're not accepted if people haven't met you yet, like met the real you.
This is funny because in my own therapy right now, my therapist was like, how can you get close to someone if you're not even close to yourself?
Right, right. Oh, it's so good and
Yeah.
true,
Yeah.
right?
Like
Because then
feeling,
we don't know, like, what is it you're sharing with them? Like, who knows?
yeah, if you're not sharing with yourself and being vulnerable, how can you really be vulnerable with other people?
Yeah, you don't know what to share because, yeah, you haven't shared it with yourself.
I would love to talk about, justice
Hmm.
as therapy. I know
Yes,
you're a huge proponent of that.
right.
What does it mean when you say justice is therapeutic?
That some of the distress and anxiety and even outrage that we have is because of systemic issues, things being unfair. It's like if you work at a job that's not fair, if the legal system isn't fair, the housing and banking system are not fair, and you have any marginalized identity, and some people have multiple ones, then you're walking through life with that tension and stress. Am I going to be safe? Am I going to be okay? Am I going to be acceptable? And then people who promote oppression and benefit from it have done this masterful gaslighting where now, if you talk about oppression, you're the problem.
Mm.
Right? That's some real gaslighting,
Yeah.
right? To say racism and sexism are a problem. They're like, you're being divisive. You're being divisive. I'm like, oh, that's some old trickery,
Oh.
right? To keep people silent. So then there is injustice and there is silence. And it makes people feel powerless, makes people feel hopeless. Some people then overwork because they're trying to prove themselves. And so that creates a lot of unwellness when people share their experiences of stereotypes, stigma, discrimination. One thing we've discovered in the field of psychology is it's not only when you're the primary target, but also vicarious trauma, right? So, what is the impact when you see members of your community or who share the same identity being targeted in this way? So even if it didn't happen to you directly, what is that impact? When we think about around the time of the marches with both Black Lives Matter and Stop Asian Hate, my students who would talk about like feeling it in their bodies, even if again they weren't directly targeted, you feel it and it has an impact on your nervous system. So you just imagine if you didn't have to navigate all of that, yeah, you could still have some life stressors, but that would be a big weight lifted. Eve Ensler, who did the vagina monologues, she said this beautiful line in an interview where she said, women spend so much of our lives healing from the things that have been done to us. Imagine if we didn't have to do that, when we could spend all of that time, energy, resource building, producing, creating, writing. Like, what would we be if this
Mm.
wasn't robbing us of all that time? And I'm like, yes, yes.
I mean, the world would be such a
Ah,
beautiful place, such a different
right.
place.
If it wasn't so much needed focus on healing and we could like be thriving and flourishing and
Mm.
creative.
How do you heal when the system itself keeps harming you?
Yes, this is a very important one. So, with liberation psychology, one of the distinctions is we don't just talk about coping strategies, but resistance strategies. In other words, like how do we fight back? Or some therapists would rather call it problem solving coping, right? So, in other words, if I'm experiencing sexual harassment in the workplace and I could go to therapy and they tell me to like download a mindfulness app and do aromatherapy and take a bath, like all that is great. I love lavender tea. I love all of that. But it's like irresponsible to just help people calm their nervous system and go right back into that same environment. Then we have to talk about the different ways to resist. And there isn't just one path. For some people, it'll be, well, I'm going to leave that job. For some people, I want to make a complaint. For some people, I want to work to mandate that there's training at my job, that I want to shift supervisors or switch my shift. But us looking at what are the ways that we push back so that the things that are not acceptable, we don't have to continue to accept.
Mm.
And I like to say, because oppression is multidisciplinary, we can fight it in different ways and don't have to create this hierarchy of who's doing the real work. Meaning, some people want to protest in the streets, and that works. They had research studies that found that, like in the cities where they had more of those marches, there was a statistically significant decrease in killing of unarmed people by police. Because with all the marching, they knew media was there, people are watching them, so they
Mm.
think twice before shooting people. Great. Other people may say, I don't want to march, but I'll work on policy. Or I'm a school teacher and I'm going to teach kids this. Or I'm a parent and I want to parent my children in this way. Or I'm an artist, and there's a term, artivism. I'm going to use my art as activism. So this is what it means to live with ongoing trauma, is that we will also need to resist.
Yeah, that's so powerful. Why don't we recognize racism,
Mhm.
classism, and sexism as trauma?
It is because there are members of the mental health field who are not a part of those marginalized groups, and so are wanting to shut the door and only focus on the traumas that they've experienced.
Mm.
At first, the term trauma was associated with veterans. Then people started saying, well, what about child abuse and school shootings? And first, veterans were like, what? You all haven't been to war. And then we said, well, some people's war was in their childhood home. And so then we enlarged the category to include child abuse and assault and all of these things. And so then when those of us come forward and say, well, racism can be traumatizing, you'll have some people who are not targets of racism, who are mental health professionals, who will say, well, if you say that, you're going to dilute the term and it loses its meaning if that's included, like only my thing.
Mm.
So it's very problematic. And it is this silence in our society about some things you shouldn't talk about. So even in therapy, if I tell therapists or psychologists that in the intake, they need to ask people about their experiences with discrimination, some people will literally say, oh, that sounds political. I don't want to be political. But it's like, well, you're going to ask them all kinds of questions about their drug use, their sex life, their how much money they make, but you can't ask if they've experienced discrimination. It's
Mm.
outrageous.
Even on a personal level, as I'm going through therapy, I'm realizing a lot of my, I guess, trauma and the behaviors are from racism
Yes.
from way back that I accept. I was in denial.
Right? Just going through the motions of not seeing it.
And, you mentioned earlier, like needing to prove yourself, overworking as a byproduct of that. I'm
Yeah.
realizing that that was totally me.
Yeah. Right. And you don't see it because that looks like high functioning.
Exactly. What's your advice for people who may have had like similar experiences where they may not even be aware of the
Yeah.
trauma that they faced from racism way back
Right.
or from oppression in any
Yeah.
way? What's your
Mm.
advice to them?
Well, I think a part of it for us to be able to recognize it is highlighting the different ways we cope. Because like you named the one of like the busyness, right? Or the, overextending yourself. And often we don't think of those as symptoms. So if people say like, did it bother you? They're imagining you mean like, was I tearful? Right. So then they're like, I didn't cry about it. I wasn't stuck in the bed. I just kept moving. So I think in part, yeah, it's raising awareness about the different ways we respond and how that is still a response, that it had an impact even if you stayed busy.
What are some other signs that may tell you that they
Yeah.
have experienced this?
So sometimes it's what we call internalized oppression, internalized racism, internalized sexism. This is basically when I have come to believe the lies I've been told about the groups I belong in. So when I hear someone talking and they're the only member of their group they like, well, then you have like internalized those ideas, right? For women, sometimes I'll hear women say things like, oh, I don't like to be friends with women because women are superficial. And I say, like, so all men are deep? Men are just profound and like women are just silly. It's ridiculous. But it's like you've heard that enough and believed it, and you're repeating it and believe you're the exception to the rule. Like you're the only deep woman on the planet. Or if I, hear a Black person who says like, I don't like Black businesses because they're unprofessional. Well, you'll go to a white business that's not professional, but you don't think of it as a white business. You're like, oh, that CVS on that particular street was problematic. But if it's a Black restaurant, then you're like, see, that's why I hate coming here. So we believe the lies about our own group.
How do you heal from that?
It is in part with truth and with, we call it positive racial or gender socialization. Because some of us, especially both, I guess, public or private school, often were never told the contributions of our community. You think about psychologically the message of if there's a whole wall that's, at your school that says great inventors and they're all white men, it's telling you something. Great authors as all white folks, then you're like, well, like, how am I going to be a writer? It's like the exposure of learning our suppressed history, which in this country now, they're trying to make it illegal. It's illegal to tell your history. So, yeah, that's where the power is. And they know that.
What could the world look like if the world was healed from this?
When we can come together and create and build, we have not yet seen what we could be. Really, the quote unquote great idea of what America is supposed to be is like all these diverse people coming together. And what we could come up with our shared genius, our shared culture, our shared appreciation, it would exceed our imagination because our current imagination is based on this current world.
I love that. It's better than we can even imagine.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. Thema, you've shared so much powerful wisdom today. Thank you so much. If you could,
thank you for having me. I have loved every minute of it.
Oh, me too. If you could leave our listeners with one piece of advice to help them find their light, what would that be?
I would tell you this Mexican proverb that says, they tried to bury us. They didn't know we were seeds. And so there are experiences that were meant to bury you, but you can grow even out of there and be your magnificent self.
I love that so much. Now, every time something happens, that's a seed.
Yes, that's a seed. I love it.
For anyone looking to learn more about your work, where can they find you?
So my website is drthema.com. On Instagram, I am dr.thema. I'm on TikTok and Threads and X and all of those. My books, the newest books are Matters of the Heart, Homecoming, and Reclaim Yourself. And I also have a book, The Anti-Racism Handbook. So all of those are available online, and some of those are even available on audiobook if you'd rather listen.
Amazing. Well,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much for being here again. And I can't wait to share this with the rest of the world.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. Hope that resonated with you.
If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button and leave your thoughts and comments.
Your support means the world to us and helps us bring these conversations to you for free. We read every single comment and we would love to connect with you there. So go subscribe. Until next time, love yourself, be kind to yourself, and remember, your light is always within you.